Okay, so we're going to start jumping into basically 3 and 4 on our scale of 12 things. So in the making of a missionary or the making of a missionary movement, there's basically 12 phases, but they're also kind of hurdles, meaning each phase you can come to it and seemingly not get anywhere. It's like it stops you, you don't know really what to do, and a lot of times it'll be discouraging and you'll want to go back or you'll redefine things or get off track or whatever the case might be, okay? So it's important to kind of understand the 12 phases, because when you guys starting to meet in smaller groups and start trying to define for yourselves what it is to be a covenant community, these 12 things are going to be part of what you're going to work through, right? Like, again, any church community needs to continually seek to encounter God, right? We've talked about encountering God. Each person in that group during the week needs to seek to encounter God. We need to seek as families in our home to encounter God. This is a regular part of who we are. It's a phase that we need to constantly exercise and walk in, but it's also sometimes a hurdle. Like all of a sudden you hit a brick wall and it's like, I don't know, it doesn't feel like God's around or whatever the case might be. And then you got to kind of work through that, right? And so you got to understand different practices and, okay, what are we going to practice now? Or how are we going to break through that wall? Whatever the case might be. And then, of course, second one was talking about hearing from God, specifically hearing from God in the context of where is my mission field? And what is my mission? What am I being sent to do? This really differentiates what I would call nominal Christians and real Christians. In other words, people who say they're a Christian and then people who are true followers and disciples of Jesus. So in other words, here's the two people. They both go to work. And let's say they even go to the same business. So they both look the same. Maybe they both pray on the way to work. So they both look like the same. But one, the whole reason they took the job was not for the job. They took the job because they feel God's sending them there. And so therefore, when they get there, they see themselves as an ambassador. They see themselves as, I'm not here just to do a good job and make money. I'm here to proclaim Christ. I'm here to serve everyone and to bless everyone so that they would come to know Jesus. And every move, every conversation, I know where I'm going with this. I know why I'm there and I know who I am, and therefore the way I move and operate and everything is very different than the Christian who's just like, yeah, I mean, I thought it was a pretty good place to work. It kind of fits my skill sets and, it pays me a good enough salary, so I got a job there. And a lot of Christians live their lives that way of just same thing. Well, here's a nice house and, I kind of like the neighborhood and so we bought it. Versus the missionaries going, Lord, where do you want us to live? Maybe we'll buy a house in a neighborhood that's not so great for the purpose of because you're calling us there. Or maybe we'll buy a house or rent a house that's above really what we can afford because God's calling us to that neighborhood. So every move that a missionary makes is missional minded versus the Christian who's just the Christian. They're just pretty much living like the non-believer. They're looking at the world just like the non-believer does and just trying to make good decisions. Just trying to live a good life. They're just a part of the mix. They come into a place and nothing changes. It pretty much remains the same. The missionary, when he comes into a place, everything changes. That's the difference. Okay? So now number 3 is you have to incarnate yourself. And we're going to kind of combine 3 and 4, incarnating yourself and discipling people to faith. And we're going to kind of sit on this one for a while because I think this is the thing that most people struggle with and are unfamiliar with, but also is the most critical. So every one of your little covenant groups, they will eventually die unless your group is centered on this. Unless your group is doing this, praying through this, trying to have breakthroughs in everybody in your group, and that's a big focus of what you're doing, well then pretty soon that group's either going to become inward focused, and then it's just about us, or pretty soon it becomes missionless, And then pretty soon it's like, why are we even meeting? And one of those two things, eventually it breaks up. Eventually it falls apart. So this discipling to faith, this being sent and knowing what you're being sent to do is very important, okay? So, again, to incarnate yourself, this is where you can't fake it no more, right? Like, either I know who Jesus is, and I know what his mission was and how he did it, and I've practiced that and become that to where when I come into a place, that's how I come in, right? You can't fake it no more, right? You can, well, yeah, I think I've encountered God. Yeah, I think I've heard from God. And everybody's like, okay, maybe they did. But when it comes to incarnating yourself, truly incarnating Christ in a place of business, in a school, in your home, in your life, that's either there or it's not there. The fruit either bears that out or it doesn't. And you know, I could ask you certain questions and you would have clear-cut answers. If when you go into a business, what do people always do? Hey, so tell me about yourself. Hey, what do you like? Hey, what made you come here? How do you respond? The Christian who's living like an atheist responds just like the atheist. Well, I like the job, I like the benefits, and, I got some schooling in this area, so I'm excited to kind of, do my thing here, and that's what they say. The missionary talks completely different. Well, that's actually a longer story than maybe you're prepared for. Do you really want to know why I'm here? Do you see the difference? And it just goes from there. I've been praying and fasting for 3 months because I knew God was moving me to a different job. And then God spoke to me in this way. I encountered God in this way, and he moved me in this way, and this opportunity came to me in this way, and then I realized God is sending me here. Would you like to know what I think I'm doing here? Let me tell you what I'm doing here. This is a completely different conversation. This is a completely different impact, okay? Because I'm not an American living in America. And I'm not a plumber doing a plumber's job. None of that is my identity. None of that is my mission. Or whatever the case might be. I am an ambassador of the Lord Jesus Christ. And I am being sent to set up colonies of the kingdom. And these colonies are meant to represent the king. So when I go into a business, I'm thinking, how do I plant a church here? A covenant community of believers who are going to pray together, who are going to read the scriptures together, and who are going to bless the company by the way they love people, by the way they serve people, by the way they bless people, by not living for themselves, by not trying to undercut people in order to climb the corporate ladder, willing to take actually the servant role rather than constantly trying to take the upper role. And people can see it. Again, I had a guy recently ask me, and like, so how long, you think you might work here, or where do you think you're trying to do, or whatever. And this guy was a Christian. Okay, he was one of those kind. He goes to church, but he's there for the paycheck, and everybody knows it. Okay? And then I look at him and I go, I'm here to disciple people to Jesus, and that's the only reason. And the moment I feel that calling is no longer a part of why I'm here, I'll be leaving here. And he knows me enough to know, like, yep, that makes sense. And sure enough, this is what happened. We're getting ready to move into another business, do the same thing. And so again, I'm not thinking career. I'm not thinking, how do I continue to make more money and more money and more money? Maybe that works out to where I make more money and more money. I don't know. But that's not my goal. I may like to get into a job where I'm really kind of enjoy the job. But that's not my number one goal. My number one goal is, where are you sending me, And am I living out the mission of Christ? Okay, so that's the incarnation. And to incarnate Christ, obviously there's a lot to it. And that's why I prayed to begin with. And this is a prayer you should be praying on a constant basis, because this is the prayer that the apostles constantly prayed for the churches of their day. That you would receive revelation of who Jesus is and revelation concerning your calling as a saint of his. Now, why doesn't Paul just give them the definition and they all know? Because it ain't quite that simple. Because even if you give people the definition, what does that set them up? It sets them up for failure, actually. Okay, what's the definition? I got the definition. And now I know. Now I'm just setting them up for deception, because they're walking around going, I've got this definition and therefore I am this. Versus actually being that. Okay? So, this again, we need to understand this in the larger context of the bigger story. So this goes all the way back to Abraham, where God is saying, I'm going to reclaim the nations through you. All the nations have now come under idolatry, false gods, and the whole human project has gone off course. And Abraham, I'm going to choose you, and I'm going to bless you, and through you bless all the nations of the earth. Paul even references this. That's in Genesis 12. It's in Genesis 22. It's in Genesis 26 and some other places throughout Scripture. And Paul references the Genesis passage and says, the gospel preached beforehand to Abraham. What's he saying? Is he saying that's actually the gospel? No, he's saying this was pointing to what the gospel would do. You are being sent to bless the nations. Now, what does it mean to bless the nations? It means to God work through you so that they can be reclaimed as God's own. That's true blessing. That's not necessarily money. That's not necessarily all, it can include a lot of things. But if the ultimate blessing of covenant relationship and partnership with God is not there, then it's not the real blessing. Okay, that's the real blessing. Let me read a couple other passages here just to kind of go through some things. First of all, I'm going to read Matthew again, 28, verses 18 through 20. And I'm going to read it through a couple different versions. The Common Jewish Bible, so it's going to read a little different than you're used to. It says, make people from all nations into Talmidim, which is a Hebrew word for disciples, immersing them into the reality of the Father, the Son, and the Spirit. Immersing them into the reality of God. That's why you're going to work. That's what you're doing as a father or mother in the home. That's what you're doing at school. That's what you're doing in the bowling league, or wherever you go, when you're coaching a team, or wherever you go, you're going there to immerse people into the reality of the Father, the Son, and the Spirit. And now again, the older translations into English, so some of the oldest ones, like the Geneva version, which was done back in the 1500s, they all say the word teach instead of disciple. The Greek word can be translated as either one. So it's kind of interesting that for a while in English it was translated as teach, and then at some point it came as the word disciple. Okay, now listen to it in both ways. In the Geneva version it says, teach all the nations. That's what you're to do. What are you to teach them? How to obey Christ. Now, do you start trying to force people to do that? No, that's what the Roman Catholic Church got caught up in and got off. Right? By the sword, you will be baptized today. We're making you a disciple. Okay? And so we're not trying to do that by force of argument either. I'm going to argue you into being a disciple. No, I'm going to do it through 3 different ways, okay, that they're accustomed to. And this is through what the Bible talks about. You can see this in what Jesus does with the parables. By the way, I'd recommend you start studying the parables again. Look at what Jesus is saying and how he's saying it. What he's doing is, like the parable of the sower. What is he saying? These people are all farmers for the most part, so they understand it. Hey, what happens when a seed falls into the ground? Right? He's talking about the design of nature itself. Now, who created this? God. God has hid himself in the creational order. In other words, think about it like this. Like even today, nobody's a farmer, but they still understand it. Like, have you ever thought, if there is a God, is he loving? How would we know? See, these are the kind of conversations I have with people that are non-believers. Okay, if he in fact did create this world, it would seem it reveals something about him. First of all, this world is the only one in the universe that we're aware of that actually provides for us to live. Living, food, water, right? But it's not like it's created in a way where I just walk down the street and go, I want an apple here and a carrot here, and I just find food everywhere. That's not the way it is it? No, that's not the way it is. If we're going to really get the provision that is here for us, we have to participate. That's interesting. So if this God, whoever he might be, is real and he created it that way, it would seem he's created it to have partnership with us. Would you agree? Yeah, I would agree. I'm discipling them to faith. I'm getting them to see and come to know who he is, how he thinks, how he works, how he operates in creational order, then in the conscience and the human makeup. Hey, have you ever noticed why a lie detector test works? Well, when somebody's asked a question and they know they're getting ready to lie, their blood pressure and their heart starts beating and stuff starts happening that's measurable, and then you can know they're lying. Interesting that our bodies work that way. So if this was actually a created, designed body, we would say that whoever designed it to work like this is against lying. Yep, we would have to agree to that. Interesting. You see what I'm saying? And on every aspect of life, every relationship, family dynamics, everything is there if you'll just open your eyes and see the creational order, see the conscience and the makeup of man, and finally the wisdom and the application of how God works things. And again, I created a video. It's on the reality thing. You can go watch it. And I think it's like, I can't even remember the, you just have to find it and watch it. I'll have to look it up later. But anyway, I break down these 3 things and how the scriptures talk about in Proverbs. It says wisdom cries out in the street. So read Proverbs chapter 8, the whole chapter. And by the end of it, you're going to go, that almost sounds like it's talking about Jesus. And it is. Only it's talking about wisdom. Because wisdom is created by God. It's the Word of God. And Jesus is the personification of that wisdom. So if you understand the wisdom, and then you're invited to the one who personifies it, it tends to make you want to go, I might want to follow this guy. And this is discipling them to faith through wisdom. Now, here's where you can't fake it. So if you have no wisdom, see, many Christians have no wisdom. because they don't know God. They think because they signed up and said, I'm a Christian and I go to church, I know God. But if you have no wisdom, you don't know God. If you don't know how the world works, you don't know God. Again, the equivalent would be, do I know how to drive? And somebody asks me, well, when you see a red light, what does that mean to you? It means go. And when you see a green light, what does it mean to you? It means stop. Right. Well, or, you know what? Let me live it that way. Or I'll invite you, hey, let's practice. You drive tomorrow like this, and then the next day drive it the other way, and let's see what the wisdom is. You see, this is inviting them into practicing the ways of Christ. Again, I've done this many times. Again, I'm like, okay, so let's test it out on your wife. And I'll say, okay, let's choose one day. Don't tell your wife nothing. We're doing this in the secret. And you just seek to love her and serve her in every way you can think of. And then the next day, you serve yourself. And just tell me how that goes for you. And then all of a sudden, oh, Jesus says it's better to give than to receive. What do you think? Let's put it to the test. See, I'm not forcing my opinions or my beliefs. Okay, let's put it to the test. And I'll put it to the test. So whatever the truths are, whatever the wisdom is, whatever the creational order is, we're going to talk about those things. And we may agree or we may disagree. And you actually find out that if you actually know what it is, most people will agree with it. And then we're going to practice it. And then see what happens. And by doing this, they come to know God even before they know him personally. So through the general revelation and the what some people call natural theology is what I'm talking about here. So general revelation or natural theology, everybody on the planet gets it. God is speaking to everybody and making himself known to everybody through these things. And for the non-believer, therefore, he has no excuse. God is talking to him. God is speaking to him, and he's just running through red lights. Or he's suppressing the truth. This is how Paul talks about it in Romans. What can be known about God is evident to them by the things that God has created. You know internally I shouldn't be lying, and yet I still do. I know I shouldn't manipulate, but I still do. I know I shouldn't this, but I still do, and I know it. Because guess what? I don't tell anybody. And I do it in the dark when no one's looking. So I know, and this is something you guys all need to understand, like, there are no true atheists. I know there's a lot of argumentation out there about a lot of different things. You got to cut through that crap and just go, oh, they're actually lying to themselves. Oh, okay. How do I get them to see that? Versus you as a Christian go, oh, it's a pretty good argument. I don't know how to argue and all this kind of stuff. Well, I don't know. Maybe that is true. And you get all confused. See, you haven't been incarnated yet. You don't know what your message is. You don't understand these things. You don't have wisdom. You don't know how the creational order of things works. See, again, if you understand these things and you search them out, you meditate them on in Scripture, and then you practice these things. This is what it is to be a disciple, by the way. You're constantly practicing these things. You can step into any business, even ones you know nothing about, and instantly be probably one of the wisest people in the room. How did Joseph become second in command to Pharaoh? How does the people of God, how does Daniel become high in the courts of the king? And what does the Bible say? There was no one wise like Daniel. See, if you know God, then you know the wisdom. And that travels everywhere. Okay? So Christians, they get the special revelation, the Bible. And God speaks through this too. Okay? But then I can study the Bible really well and think I'm an expert. But if I don't align that with also the general revelation, I can think I'm getting special revelation, but all I'm getting actually is my own twisted opinion of what I think it says. See, there are 7 voices. There are 7 ways in which God speaks to us to reveal to us truth. And when they all line up, okay, that's no coincidence. It all lines up. That's truth. So if what I'm reading tells me one thing, how I interpret it tells me one thing, but it doesn't work in real world, something's off here. I don't understand the truth yet. But when it works all the way around, now I've found truth. Now I'm actually coming to know God. See, knowing God is not a matter of signing a doctrinal statement. Not a matter of, well, hey, I've written the book of John, so I know God. Knowing God is living like God. Walking like God. Being sent like Jesus was sent, and doing the works of Christ that Christ did. Okay? All your little groups, you're going to have to work through this stuff. You're going to be praying for each other. You're going to be saying, okay, when you go to work, what happens? What are you doing? Why are you there? What's the mission? Who's God having you reach? Okay, when you go home to your wives and your kids, what's going on there? Right? Like, this is where you can't fake it no more. Oh, I'm kind of a rude guy, and I'm rude at home. Well, then, in order to disciple anybody to faith, they have to respect you. They have to respect you and have a certain level of trust for you, even if they think you're a little weird or don't believe all the things you believe. But they have a respect. And they see, just like they saw with Joseph, just like they saw with Daniel, whatever these guys do, whatever they touch, it all kind of goes well. It works. I don't like that guy. And not only that, in Daniel's case, we're trying to trap him. He's got to have some things, because we know we all do. We searched and searched. We couldn't find any dirt on him. There's no dirt on this guy. How are we going to take him down? That should be Christians. You go into a place of work, they can't find any fault. They see your relationship with your family. They see you the work. They see you how you treat the janitor. They see how you talk to the president. Again, you guys know Daniel. There was a well-known Christian leader in town who came into the office to have a discussion with me. And he told me later, I was looking forward to seeing this conversation go down because I wanted to see how you responded. And he goes, and I saw you didn't change the message at all. And it earned respect. In other words, he heard me talk the way I talk about Jesus and all these truths and da-da-da-da. And then he wanted to see, did I speak those same hard truths to a guy that, whatever. It's the same. And again, how you talk to people, how you treat people, everybody's watching. And they're looking. If you don't have respect and if you don't love people, you can't disciple anybody to faith. It just won't happen. You can have all the practices, you can have all the definitions. If you're not like Christ, it's probably not going very far. So that's when you go, when I go to work, what happens? Oh, I must not be much of a Christian. I must not know God very much. Because I get fired because I don't even know what I'm doing. Or I have conflict with people at work. And when problems erupt, I'm not the solution ever. That means you don't know God. Okay, I'm not saying this to be mean. I'm saying this to awaken you to pray and to seek, as James would say, those of you who lack wisdom. So James is assuming many of these Christians in his churches lack wisdom. Those of you who lack wisdom, you should ask God. This is how this works, by the way. For the wisdom. Does anybody have any problems at work? Right? Every job has multiple problems. It's your job to bring the wisdom. I don't care if you're the janitor. It's your job and responsibility to bring the wisdom to that company and to those people to solve those problems. That's why you're being sent there. You're being blessed with the wisdom because you know God, evidently. And you've been given the special revelation, evidently. And you understand the created order because you know God created it, and therefore you're interested in it, and therefore you're studying it and meditating upon it. And therefore, when you step into that position, you know you're being sent there to solve the problems. The relational problems, the financial problems, the structure of the business problems, all of it. It's on you. This is what you were being called to. The heavenly calling of the saints, as Hebrews 3 would put it. You didn't just get called by an average Joe. You got called by the creator of the universe to be in partnership with him, and he has given you his word and his spirit so that you can know him and know his wisdom and bring that blessing to all the nations of the earth. This is both a blessing and a responsibility, because it's a blessing to be blessed in this way, and then it's a responsibility to give it away. Freely you have received, now go freely give it. And when you go to give it, and it all falls apart, then you go, oh, I don't know God. And I do this still to my, if anything's not quite working, I step back and go, I must not know God right here. God, I need your revelation. I need your wisdom. I need your understanding from word and from creation. Show me what I'm missing. So I'm not taking it as a guilt trip. I'm taking it as a warning light. And rather than just being, well, hey, I'm the man of God here, so listen to me, and then it's all wrong, that doesn't work. Before I go stepping into it, I make sure I'm walking in God's wisdom. This is where it takes true spiritual discernment. This is where you have to be a diligent man or woman of God, seeking God's face for wisdom and understanding in every way. This is why to be a disciple of Jesus will cost you everything. You got no time for nothing else. You're in constant study, seek, understanding mode because you're being called to bring a blessing to the nations. And in your particular situation, in most cases, that's in your home. That's in the surrounding families and friends and all their homes. You're responsible for their homes too. I'm not just responsible for my marriage. I'm responsible for all your marriages. And you too. You're responsible for everybody in here. Yours too, Matt. But you best. Mm-hmm.
Example like that you lived through that you or like you were just like, yeah, it wasn't the solution to that problem. I don't have that wisdom for that.
Yeah.
But this is what I did.
Right. So if I don't know, I'm going to say I don't know. So that's the first thing. So, okay, I'm sitting in an office and we're having a meeting and I'm listening. You know what? I don't know. But I'm going to find out. This is what I do know. We don't want to manipulate people. Are we on the same page? Yeah. Right? In other words, I'll tell them what I do know. And then I'm going to seek for understanding about what I don't know. And then I'm going to present it and submit it to them, non-believers and believers alike. How does this sound to you? See, I'm humble. I'm not coming in guns a-blazing in pride and I've got the answers. No, I'm the one through which it's going to come through, and I understand this dynamic. So I'm going to present it. You see this with Daniel. You see this with Joseph. You see this throughout the Bible. They're presenting. Joseph presented the idea to the Pharaoh. And the Pharaoh goes, that's a great idea. Let's do that. In fact, I'm putting you in charge to make sure that happens. That'll be the response. So I don't care how irrational your bosses and managers that you're working with are, if you bring God's wisdom, they will listen. And if they don't, it's going to be egg on their face eventually, and then eventually they will listen. This is if you go through the book of Acts again, and I'm not going to have time to go through it all, but Paul's in a prisoner, and he's being shipped to Rome to stand before Caesar. And right at the beginning of the trip, there's close to like 300 people going to be getting on the ship. There's a group of them that are prisoners. So Paul's a prisoner, and he's among other prisoners. And then there's probably about 200 soldiers, and then there's a captain who's got all the sea wisdom, how to go the boat and the weather and all that kind of stuff. And then you got a captain over the soldiers. And Paul says, hey, I'm just a prisoner here, but I don't think we should go on this voyage. And the head captain guy, or the Praetorian guard guy, he doesn't listen to Paul. He listens to the ship captain and goes, well, why would I listen to you? I'm going to listen to the ship captain here. Okay. Of course, the trip turns out pretty bad. And through a series of events, pretty soon Paul goes, I think now this is what we should do. And pretty soon everybody's going, yep, we're doing what Paul says. That's how it works. So that when he comes into Rome, now get this, you got to understand it. Paul's just a prisoner. He's a nobody. He's a Jew, in fact. So we're not listening to him. Nor are they now listening to him. They've taken off his shackles. They've put him in the midst of the whole train of army, and he's on a horse. It looks like he's the general. And he's being ushered into Caesar's courts. That's the turnaround. This is what you're being called to do. Okay? That's how it works. You might start off as the lowest position, but you're working your way up, not because you're after the money or the position, but because you're the carrier of God's presence, and you're the carrier of God's wisdom, and you're the carrier of God's love and justice and righteousness. Everybody on the planet respects that. They might not agree with your Jesus. They may not agree with your God or your Bible or any of that. But if you walk in truth, you walk in wisdom, you walk in love, it's amazing how God opens the doors. But if you don't have that, again, another description of Daniel, he had, it seems like the Spirit of God upon him, they said. They could sense God upon him. How much more you with the Holy Spirit? So this is why you're showing up to work early, to worship, to pray, to say, God, I need your favor. I need your wisdom. I need your presence, so that when I step into these situations, God's will is coming. I am there to bless them. First and foremost, I am there to just bless them in this way. And then blessing them in that way leads to, hey, so you're a little interested in Jesus now. All right, let's start talking about that. Okay, and then you start discipling to faith. Does that make sense? All right, so I'm just going to run through 7 things right quick. So the general revelation that everybody gets, and again, I could give you a bunch of Bible passages for all these things. Nobody has an excuse for God's existence. They all know he exists. No matter how they argue otherwise, or maybe they believe in lots of religions and lots of gods. They all know there's one. You have to know that. See, if you're going to lead, you have to know where you're going. So when people offer up all these arguments and all these things and act this way and act that way that seem contrary to this, you don't start going, well, I don't know, maybe they just don't. No. I know the enemy is blinding their eyes. I know they're suppressing the truth on purpose, because God is speaking to them right now. And they're suppressing it. Interesting. Now I'm looking at it in a different way. How do I get them to quit suppressing it? How do I help them get the blinders that the enemy has put on them off? God exists. Number 2, God created and designed everything. Again, take somebody up in a helicopter. I use this illustration a lot of times with people. Hey, if I take you up in a helicopter and we're going over an island and there's a beach there, and you see a certain set of logs laid out in a certain way that says help, what do you conclude? Well, there's probably somebody down there that needs help. So you're telling me a few sticks being put together in a certain way is enough of a design for you to say there's a designer down there? Yeah, I guess that's what I'm saying. So look at this complexity. There's a designer, and he designed it a certain way. Now, okay, you don't have to believe in me. You don't have to believe in God yet. I don't care, whatever. Let's start talking about the designs. Let's talk about science. How are things working? Both on a social level, on a scientific level, a nature level, even a human, what we are as humans and how we tick, how we work. Let's talk about all that. And then let's practice the truths of whatever those things are. Or if we disagree, all right, hey, let's practice it your way. Then we're going to practice it my way. Let's see which one works. See? So now I'm having not an argument. I'm having hey, let's go on a journey together and let's walk healthier. Let's walk wiser. Let's learn to love each other. Let's bring prosperity to the business. Okay. And now I'm walking with them, and in that walk, they again and again go, I didn't see that before. I didn't see that before. So tell me, if you haven't seen that and you haven't seen that, are there other things possibly you're not seeing? And then it opens up into the greater conversation. Number 3, God is loving and majestic. How do we know this? Again, the provision. And if he is loving, again, this is how I talk to people. So do you have kids? Yeah, I got kids. So I'm assuming you're a loving father. Yeah, I love my kids. Okay. So that means you talk to your kids, right? You communicate with them. If you didn't love them, if you quit talking to your kids, that would show you do not love them. So God, if he's there, he must be speaking because he's loving. Let's talk about all the ways in which God is already speaking to you. You just don't identify it as such. And then I start going into all the voices in their head, the voices around them, the voices through people, all of it. Are you agreeing? That's what you're hearing, right? You tell me what's going on in your head. Well, now that you say that, I was hearing this and I was hearing that. And interesting. And now we have the interesting conversations about all that. Number 4, God is personal and therefore has a desire for a personal relationship. Number 5, God is morally good and therefore wise. Again, and there's, again, you could use 1,000 different illustrations, but the whole lie detector test is one way of saying we've been created in such a way. Again, it's hard to murder somebody in cold blood. Try it. Like, here's a knife, stab me. Don't you admit, if I give him a pencil, stab me with it. It's like, that's not natural. Interesting that's not natural. I mean, if we're just animals, then you just kill and be killed and it's natural. But there's something going on here that just, or go watch somebody get brutally beat up right in front of you. This is cringy, isn't it? Interesting that you had that reaction. Why does your body react like that? Who designed that? What does that reveal? And on you go. Number 6, man is not morally good. Man is not morally good and therefore not wise. Everybody knows this. right? I mean, everybody pretty much, again, is anybody perfect? No, nobody's perfect. Okay. Yeah, but you're all liars too, right? You know, you can go through the list. So this we know. So therefore, it leads us to the final revelation that everybody gets, everybody knows. There needs to be a solution. There needs to be restoration to this problem. This misalignment that there's this good God, loving God, and we're not quite like that. And it would seem there needs to be a solution to this. What do you think God could do? And I love to have this conversation too. If you were God, how do you solve this problem? And then, of course, I look at him, I go, you can't even solve this problem in your own home. You have no wisdom. Otherwise, you're telling me all the time you can't get along with your wife, your kids are on drugs. You can't even bring a solution to your own home. So what's the solution? In other words, at some point, and again, I'm not usually introducing those ideas. They've already told me that stuff, and I go, now you told me this. Now, wouldn't that mean that you lack the wisdom? And then they're like, yeah, I lack the wisdom. And then it opens up. All right, how do we start finding the wisdom? How do we start practicing something that begins to change, that restores these problems? Right? And then eventually, hey, would you like to meet with me for about 6 to 10 weeks and let me tell you the most amazing story that makes sense out of all of what we've been discussing for this last year? And it'll bring a solution and a resolution and a restoration to every single issue you're dealing with. Can you even imagine such a story as that? I want to tell you. Okay. And now I get to give him the full gospel. And here we go. This is how you're discipling people to faith. This is what it looks like. Now, you can hear in that, you don't just, okay, and go disciple to faith. I mean, it's like it doesn't work like that. You got to seek God. You have to encounter God. You have to hear from God. He has to send you someplace, and you know he sent you here. Because if I'm living my life in accordance to how I want to live it, and then I go, okay, God, what do you want to do over here? Crickets. I'm not hearing anything. Oh, I'm not really following him. I was never meant to be here anyway. Oh, I'm being sent over here. So I got to know I'm being sent. I got to know what my mission field is. I got to know the people who are the ones I'm supposed to reach out to. So even when I go to work, I don't just start everybody. Who are the people first that you're wanting me to deal with first? And I hear that from God. And then I begin to pray for those people. I get to know them. I find out about their families. I find out about the problems. I find it all out. And I'm taking notes all the while. And I'm creating a whole catalog of information about them. And I'm praying about it and asking God to speak. Asking God to show me his wisdom for them. And then I'm studying scripture in accordance to what I'm getting about this person. And then maybe I'm reading something over here and I'm thinking about it in this way and I'm meditating on it so that when I come back to them, I have the wisdom of God. I didn't just go arrogantly, well, I'm the man of God, so I've got wisdom. And I don't do that. I'm agonizing, I'm praying, I'm fasting, I'm studying, I'm meditating, waiting on God. And then he speaks, he moves, he reveals, and then I come with the blessing. Try this. See if that works. You know, not only did it work, but I had a dream in the middle of the night. Interesting. See, this is the way it works. It's not just about the things. When you come into partnership with God, not only do the revelations of truth and wisdom come out, then the Spirit of God begins to work in ways that you can't even fathom. Now the healings, now the revelations, now the coincidences start happening everywhere. You know, all of a sudden my wife asked me this question. That was odd. No, I was praying for that. And this is where I get to tell him, oh, let me show you. Let me show you. Last week on Monday, I prayed for you. Look at what I prayed. Are you kidding me? Nope. See, God's personal. He's speaking to you. He loves you. He wants you to know him. Where's the argument now? See, I didn't have to convince them. I didn't argue with them. They encountered him. And now I'm revealing what they encountered and why. See, this is what Jesus did all the time. Oh, you don't want to believe me? Well, believe me for this sake. For this work. Okay, listen to this story. What do you think now? And then all of a sudden, you're like, oh, he's got a good point there. Well, that was amazing. That's kind of hard to explain away. This is where you have to have faith. This is where you have to move in the Spirit, hear from the Spirit, walk in the Spirit, pray for God to use you. Desperately. You're not just going to work. You know, oh, I don't know, I'm kind of tired of the job, and my boss is going to yell at me again, and you know. Right? I got to get up early and go to work. I want to do this. No, I'm going early. I have purpose. I've been called by the King. See, purpose and this kind of understanding brings joy, brings life. And it brings truth and freedom for me and my family and those around me as well. When I live like the world lives, well, then it's like, you know, then you live like the rest of the world. And when you show up at the job, nothing changes, just like when everybody else shows up to the job. And therefore, I don't even know why I'm here. I wish I could get paid a little more. And now you're a disgruntled employee and people can see it. And now you have no witness, no respect, and you can't disciple anybody to faith. It's just the way it works. Okay? All right. So, we're only beginning. We're going to break up into groups of 2, 3, or 4. And